Story 1. God's mouth. I huffed and puffed under my breath. As I stared into God's mouth, I felt like the big bad wolf ready to interrupt the innocent little pigs as they hurriedly fortified their makeshift homes. I grinned at this thought and then turned my head to look for Margaret. She was a couple of feet down the hill from the entrance of the cave, holding a walking stick close to her petite breast. "Hurry up," I called down to her. I turned back to the cave, still grinning. An old, rotted sign outside read, "God's Mouth Cave, Keep Out." What a tired cliche. Margaret finally made it to the entrance and stood beside me, almost doubled over and out of breath. I looked down and smiled. "Check it out," I laughed. "God's mouth. Wonder where Jesus' anus is." I chuckled to myself. Margaret was less amused. "Give me the damn water bottle," she said, exasperated. The open bottle met her lips, and for a moment I felt peaceful in a way, watching her drink the water. Actually, I take that back, the peaceful comment. It was more of a feeling that was sort of hard to put my finger on or give a name, but I could settle for a nice content. Content seemed to be one of those words that manifest itself when natural human words seemed to fail. Again, an utter cliche, but it felt good to feel a strange, mixed-up sort of happy for once. I sighed and turned my flashlight on. I pointed it into the cave. Black. God's mouth. This seemed like the antithesis of a Holy Spirit. ITU. Turned again to Margaret. "You ready?" I asked. She was finally standing straight up. She nodded. I clapped a friendly hand to her back, and we walked into God's mouth. The inside was not unlike the preview I had glimpsed outside with my flashlight, dark, dismal, and endlessly black. It seemed to stretch endlessly, no matter how I positioned my flashlight. The rocky terrain was damp and imposing. The last natural light slowly disappeared behind Margaret and I as we made our way deeper and deeper. I found it strange how soft and compelling the world around me now appeared, despite the stalactites, stalagmites, and other various rocky formations being so jagged. It seemed that even amongst the pointed teeth of God I could lay down and rest there forever. It was comfortable. Apparently Margaret didn't agree. She shivered uncomfortably under my arm. I raised my eyebrows. "Need your coat?" I asked. I tried to look at her and make non-verbal communication as explicit as possible until I realized that we were lost in inky blackness of the mouth. I bit my lip and waited, but she didn't respond. For a couple minutes we walked in silence. She stopped and stood motionless. I stopped, too. "Why the hell are we even in here?" she said. She sounded irritated. I shrugged, more to appease myself than her, and shoved my flashlight under my face. Bladed shadows obscured half my face, the other half illuminated in a wretched mask. "Spooky," I cried, chuckling. She didn't move. "Sire, I thought you Washington." "To go," I said. I noticed how my voice echoed against the cave walls at any volume. I began again, scratching at my chin. "You did say you wanted to go see some nature for our vacation, and you did sound impressed when I told you about my visit to Mammoth Caves a couple years back," so my voice trailed off. I could still sense her irritation. "No," she said. I frowned. "No, you wanted to go here. I wanted to go to a beach or something, but no, a cave." "A cave?" Nathan. She sounded more like the big bad wolf now. I know that you have this weird fetish for spelunking or something, but I don't really want to be dragged into it. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to go on a trip and get into nature and fresh air, but this, I could hear her arms flail and gesture about in the th. Hey, care, this is cave air, not fresh air. This air is practically fermenting, plus, isn't this illegal? Can we please just leave? We both stood there. The only sound that could be heard was the electricity in the air being stifled and smothered by the damp atmosphere. Finally, I began to walk. I didn't hear Margaret follow me, but I kept moving forward. Then, Nathan, she said, stop, please stop. So I stopped. I'm sorry, she said. I could hear her moving closer to me. I'm tired and I'm not used to running and climbing around and the like. I'm just tired. It's okay, I said. She gripped my arm. Really, it's fine. I shook my head. Which way is out? I don't remember. I could feel Margaret physically pause. Neither of us could remember. Somehow, in the confusion of our argument, I'd forgotten which way we had been moving. Idiot, I thought to myself. I should have brought a goddamn rope or something to trail from the entrance of the cave. I had take action. So without much thought, I turned 180 degrees and said, this way. We walked for what seemed to be hours. My feet were tired and sore, and I could hear Margaret's groans from behind me. She held my hand tightly. I felt terrible. This was my fault. Then I froze. Hey, I said, put your hand out. Feel this rock. I could hear Margaret's bare palm press against the stone. Isn't this, like, abnormally warm? I said. She didn't say anything. I began to work my way along the wall, feeling it as I went, shining the flashlight in front of me. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain on my head as the ceiling of God's mouth met with my scalp. Ah, shit, I shouted. Oh, Nick, are you okay? Margaret asked. She seemed on the verge of panic. Now, I'm fine, I said. Please, calm down. We'll get out of here soon. I promise. I started again, pointing my flashlight upwards now to see the ceiling above me. It seemed to be getting narrower. That was strange. Listen. Margaret, babe, I said through clenched teeth. I think we gotta turn around. Margaret sighed next to me. Again, we walked for a decent length. I kept my flashlight. Kitty pointed upwards this time. Sure enough, the space in the cave seemed to become smaller and smaller. If there was any resonating light left in God's mouth aside from my flashlight, I'm sure Margaret would have been able to see the whites of my eyes spreading in panic. We were completely lost. I let go of Margaret's hand and began to feverishly feel my way along the walls. No, Nathan, I heard her shout. I kept going. We had to get out. If we were lost, nobody would be able to find us. I kept feeling along the wall until I abruptly hit a corner. Fuck, I said aloud. Margaret, this seems to be a dead end. I spun around on my heel. Margaret, no answer. Shit, I began to repeat my process again, almost running as I felt the wall run past my fingertips. Oh, damp rocks and jagged spears. Suddenly, I found myself at a corner again. Fuck, I shouted. Margaret, I was belting her name out now. In the corner of the caves, where I had been thwarted so many times already, I heard a noise. It sounded like muffled static from a television. I pressed my ear against the rock. It seemed to be getting even warmer now. I heard the faint sounds of Margaret on the other side of the rock. She was screaming. "No, no, no," I said. "No, no, 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 no." I began running haphazardly into the walls around me. With dawning realization came a wave of sheer horror. There was no entrance. There was no exit. Only these four corners and me. I could feel blood begin to trickle from the cut I managed to get by bashing my body into the cave's walls. They were closing in on me. They were coming in for the kill, and soon they would be pressing in on my skull and crushing my rib cage. I sat there for hours, waiting for death. My flashlight was becoming dim and blinking. Finally, I felt the soft touch of these rocky walls press against my back. I began to cry as I lay down on the ground. I let my flashlight all on the small hills of stone. As I quietly stayed prone, tears dripping down my face, I turned and looked at the flashlight. Its last fading beams of light pointed at something not far away from my see. I squinted in the darkness, my eyes widened, and I felt tears fall even harder from my face. The rocks were piercing my skin now, and blood dripped from all sides there, and the last light of my flashlight was the appetizer. The spotlight shone on a hand whose nails were painted red, and I screamed in agony as I watched God's mouth chew its latest meal. Story 2. He sees I jammed my hands into the pockets of my pullover sweater and hunched my shoulders slightly against the morning chill. The spongy forest floor cushioned and muffled each footfall into near-perfect silence. That explains why I didn't know I was being watched, followed, never alone, unsafe. The towering redwoods used to bring me comfort, sheltering me with their spiny branches. Then there was that day, just that one day, changing everything. It was morning, a bit early, just after dawn. The ocean fog had rolled in, shrouding everything in a thick mist. Even though I was young, just a teen, I knew my mom would be okay with me walking around this early. I had grown up in these woods after all. I should have noticed that new tree, a tree that hadn't been there yesterday, a tree that shouldn't have been there at all. It wasn't even a tree. But I didn't take notice because an odd rustling, swishing sound approached me from behind. A light chill ran across my shoulders as I spun frantically to look at the source of the noise. My cat, Anna, trotted up to me happily through the fog and rubbed her head on my leg. I ran my hands through her long, silvery fur. How could I have been so paranoid? She almost always followed me on my walks. I strolled a bit longer, Anna following me unusually closely. Suddenly, she darted off into the forest, leaving me alone. I didn't know that was the last time I would see her alive. How could I have? Must have been a squirrel, I said slowly. I kept walking, then I heard it, an unearthly yowl. An animal in pain. A cat, my cat, Anna. I shot into the grayness, crashing through the undergrowth towards the sound of my beloved pet. A small clearing opened in front of me, empty, lifeless. An old redwood tree sat at the other side of the clearing. I stepped toward it, closer, until it was 6 feet from my face. Bile rose in my throat as I saw a symbol scrawled on the bark, an X superimposed on a circle, written in blood. Fresh blood. A buzzing sound filled my ears, like that of an insect. I stared at the symbol, not knowing what to think. The buzz increased in frequency until it was a high-pitched ring. It hurt my ears. They felt like they were on the verge of bleeding. Yet, somehow, I still managed to hear a soft laugh behind me, an evil snicker. I turned slowly and saw him. It, whatever the hell it is or was, it was so tall, 10 feet maybe. At first I thought it was a logger. I had seen some pretty big loggers in my life, but what logger wears a damn business suit in the forest? And I have never seen, or will see, a human that tall, and what human has that many limbs, along with 2 abnormally long, spindly arms. It had others, tentacles, 4, 6, 8, maybe 10. It was skinny, too, unnaturally slender. I saw something in its hands. In its white hands, something silver and gray and scarlet. In each hand, dripping scarlet, tee off of soft fur. The ringing in my ears gave way to his laughter, filling my ears, filling my mind, cramming itself into my soul, eating away the good, the happy, leaving darkness, blood, pain. Several ions flood through me at once, rage, sadness, pain, above all, fear. Undiluted fear courses through my veins along with frantic adrenaline, making me feel as though I am freezing and boiling. At the same time, an awful cough rattled my bones, forcing me to my hands and knees, my back arch slightly as I inhaled, sounding like death. But that was impossible. How could I be death? How could I be when he was standing before me? I glanced up briefly, hoping he would be gone. Hope was crushed in the face of fear. He was still there, closer, about 5 feet away far. Oh me, I was still on the ground. Then he moved. He leaned towards me. I didn't look up. He bent down and grabbed me with one of his long, bony tentacles, binding my arms to my sides. He lifted me off of the ground as if I weighed nothing. My eyes closed. I felt him grab my chin with his hand. Even with his palm on my chin, his long fingers reached into my hairline. His hands were surprisingly warm. I opened my eyes slowly. I opened my eyes to look upon his face. Our heads were about 3 feet apart. At first everything was fuzzy. I could see shapes. I saw the outline of his head tilted slightly as if in curiosity. He angled my head another way, and my vision came into focus. I opened my mouth to scream. He had no face, smooth white ball, blankness, no eyes to examine me with, though that was what he seemed to be doing, no mouth to laugh with. But I knew he had. I will never forget that laugh. My screen never made it. Impossibly fast, his hand slid up to my mouth, clamping my jaw shut, displacing some of my hair, which had been tucked behind my ear. He shook his head slowly. I flailed, kicking my legs wildly, in the same unnatural quickness, and her sharp, angular tentacle wrapped itself around my ankles, immobilizing me completely. He shook his head more emphatically, squeezing my jaw until it felt like my bones would snap. Even though I will hid myself against the impulse to cry, a tear rolled down my cheek with unexpected tenderness that contradicted the extreme pressure on my jaw. He reached up with his other hand to brush away the tear and tuck my hair out of my face. He tilted my head this way and that, and when he seemed satisfied, he shrugged a little and carelessly dropped me on the ground. I landed on why back. The air pushed out of my lungs. I managed to breathe after several seconds. He stood over me, watching, staring down at me. He waited for me to catch my breath when I did. He kicked me viciously in the ribs, flipping me over onto my stomach. I felt a rib crack, sending searing pain through my chest. That, coupled with the pain in my jaw, forced a small whimper out of me. He chuckled at my pain. Then I watched him walk away. Every breath hurt. I watched until the fog had almost completely hidden him from view. Then he stopped suddenly and turned back to look at me, Aga. In an instant, he was right behind me. He grabbed the hood of my sweater and lifted me off of the ground again, the hood practically choking me. "What do you want from me?" I managed to say, more cold laughter with abrupt cruelty. All pairs of thin tentacles pierced my back. What did I know of pain? Who was I to say that I had known agony? He did nothing to mute my screams, which echoed through the forest in a haunting song of misery. The pain was nothing I had experienced or will experience ever again. I heard someone shout my name. Far in the distance he raised my body over his head and gave my body a little jolt, driving the knives of agony deeper into my chest. My screams doubled in intensity. He finally flung me to the ground, and more bones broke. Blood trickled out of my mouth. My sobs rolled through the clearing, and then the darkness closed in. I remember waking up in the hospital, hearing voices on the other side of the curtain, voices talking about how I was lucky that the 8 stab wounds missed any vital organs, any organs at all, really. He just nicked a lung, a few broken ribs, a cracked ulna. I heard them say that the body of a convicted felon was found hanging from a tree that day after I was attacked. Convenient for him and clever of him. Everyone would think that the criminal had killed himself in an act of remorse for what he had done to me. When my parents asked me what happened, what did I remember, I lied. I told them I remembered walking through the forest, and the man had run up behind me and stabbed me. I told them I blacked out almost instantly. The police questioned me a little, but since the case was pretty much closed, they didn't really bother me after that. He didn't kill me. He didn't kill me on purpose. He didn't, because he's not done with me. I still see that symbol now and then. Here, there, everywhere. I still have scars. Nobody knows the truth. Nobody but you now. Now that you know him, he knows you. He will find you. You might not see him right away, but he sees you. You might get lucky. He might kill you from the beginning, or you might be. He, like me, you might be haunted by that slender man. Then he takes you away. He takes you away eventually. He makes your life a living hell until you welcome death. I see he has finally come for me. He stands behind me now. He is behind you, too, somewhere, waiting, watching. Goodbye, Story 3 HAX. Friday night. It's the end of the long work week. You decide to wind down. In the evening, watching a video your friend recommended. It's about the history of cartoons, something happy and interesting to watch before bed. The music during most of the film is one of those catchy tunes that gets stuck in your head. Near the end of the video, it pauses, seemingly to buffer. Even though the bar is completely buffered, on the screen, one of the characters, has been paused and blurred. It looks sort of like a green and blue figure, looking almost as if it was trying to dance. The video continues, and it is past midnight when you decide to shut down your laptop, place it next to your bed and get some sleep. As you are about to fall asleep, you hear that same tune from the video you had been watching earlier. Perhaps it was stuck in your head. Try to ignore it. You attempt to sleep again, only for the music to get louder. That is definitely not in your head. You see the light on your laptop, which indicates power, shining, and the thing going to switch it off. The music is definitely coming from the laptop. The screen remains blank. You press the power button. Keep it held down. The light on the laptop turns off. Good. The music starts up again. The light remains off. You take the power cord out of the laptop. Not like that would do much, but the music still continues. Sick of hearing it, you take the battery compartment out of your laptop and set it down. Completely empowered, it begins to play again, even louder than last time. Frustration kicks in and you start to wonder if you are actually asleep. You are so very tired. The last thing you remember before falling asleep is that music looping over and over again. The next morning, it's quiet. That music you were hearing had stopped. Maybe you had been dreaming all along. You head out to the kitchen and get some breakfast, start washing some clothes, and open the blinds. It's a Saturday, a day off for you. Seems like a good why to just laze around and not do much at all. You go back to your room and put the battery component back in your laptop. After last night's restlessness, maybe a funny video or to my help you watch some of your favorite funny videos on YouTube, and you're soon relaxed. You put one on that goes for a good 10 minutes, and halfway through it pauses to buffer. You look off at the paused frame as you wait, the comedian on stage pulling a ridiculous face. You've seen this video 10 times already, if not more, and something is off about this paused frame. You see something in the bottom right-hand corner of the image. You look closer. It looks an awful lot like that image that the video last night paused on. Narrowing your eyes, you let the rest of the film play on. Later that afternoon, after you had actually decided to clean up some around the house, you go back to your laptop. You turn on some silly cat movies. They're always good for anyone who's bored. You start to realize a pattern. Each video pauses, even if it's a 30-second one. They are all starting to pause. Everything else is loading as normal. Fast, you sigh and look at the frozen frame of a cat in the middle of yawning. You pause in your actions, too, bringing your face closer to the screen. It couldn't be that same little blurred character from last night. It's on this frame, too, the same one you saw in that other video. You close the tab and stare at your screen. Something isn't right. Something is going on. You decide to avoid any more online videos for the night. Sunday, your last day off before work. Again, after going for a walk to get a few groceries, you go back to your laptop again. It is slower than usual to start up, and the speakers are turned up louder than they were yesterday. You had gotten a phone call earlier that morning from your work colleague to send in a group photo for your company's promotional poster. As why wait for the computer to load up, it froze, the screen going blank. A single word, the word hex, types itself across the screen. The computer returns to loading and the desktop low adds what was that. It had never happened before. You are starting to think your laptop has a virus. You have protection. It usually worked very well. You open the photo your friend had asked. D4. Sighing, better get this sent off before the computer carks it. It takes an unusually long time to load up. When it does finally load, that's when you realize something is very, very wrong. That same thing, the one that was in those videos that had jammed up, it was in the background of your personal file. This was most definitely some sort of virus, perhaps like the retro harmless viruses that flashed an image onto your screen at random. Yeah, that had to be it. With your nerves settled, you email the photo of and get back to putting your groceries away. You decide to have an early night. Work always starts earlier than it says. You turn off your lights and crawl into bed. The laptop next to your bed starts to make beeping noises. It starts to get quite annoying. Definite tell. Why a virus? Do you take the battery out again and lay back down? The noises stop for a while. But before you fall asleep, you hear a long digital buzz. You're too tired to deal with it and -1 off. You are awoken, startled by a loud, horrible electronic screech coming from your laptop. The battery is still out. You open the screen. Across the screen, the word hex has been typed out so many times it has formed a text wall. The laptop makes one loud ding and shuts off. It's 4 in the morning and you cannot get back to sleep. Not after that. You watch your laptop wearily until 6 in the morning when you finally get up for work. The day went by rather quickly and you were exhausted. After hours, you arrive back home. Having gotten some takeaway on the way back, you sit down to eat and turn on the television. You feel a little more perked up after eating something and notice that the family portrait above the armchair you are adjacent to is crooked. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You go and lift the photo off its hook. Looking down at the smiling faces, you smile back. But, smash, you have dropped the photo all over the floorboard. RDS and stare down at it. You don't want to believe what you are seeing. Right in the top left corner of the photo sitting on the floor, that thing, the thing that has been plaguing your computer, that little green and blue blur, it is inside of your physical family picture. You look back at it over and over. It's still there. Irrationally, you stick the photo under the cushion of the armchair as to not look at it anymore. Another sleepless night awaits. You call in sick the next day and manage to get some sleep during the daylight hours. Last night had been filled with fear of the supernatural. What was going on was far from normal. After sleeping until the evening, you finally get up, sighing wearily. Curiosity the better of you. You pull the family portrait out from underneath your armchair cushion and look over it. It's still there. It's larger than it had been last night, now sitting right above your brother's head. You shove it back under. Feeling a lump in your throat, your anxiety rises, and you put on a favorite movie on the television to get your mind off it. You are just that exhausted. You fall asleep to the movie, waking up later that night just to go crawl into bed and sleep some more. Wednesday, you head back to work, a long, weary day. You try to talk to your friend about what's been happening, but you are just log. Hit it, yeah, right, but you're not joking. This is something that is really, really worrying you. You go home, unable to think of anything except the unwelcome figure in your photo. Getting home, you let your curiosity win. Again, you really shouldn't have. This time you stare and stare at the photo. Your brother isn't there anymore. The thing has replaced him completely. You stare some more, confused and afraid, nearly jumping out of your pants. When the phone rings, hello? The shaky voice of your mother is on the other end of the line. She tells you that your brother has just been killed in a freak accident. After the awful conversation had ended, you rush over to the family portrait. You wish this wasn't happening. You really wish this wasn't happening. It is sitting above your own head. Story 4. A hot day. The day was hot, damn hot. I think the only reason these buckets of sweat stopped leaking out from my every pore is because I'd already been drained of all water from my body. I just sat there panting like a dog. A searing, suffocating heat. The few clothes I had on were soaked full with the foul-smelling sweat. Nobody here expected this kind of weather. We found ourselves unprepared for the melting. You know, Grandpa starts off, back in my day, and I mean why back in my day, when I was about as young as you are. Oh, great. Gramps is off on one of his boring stories again, and it's so freaking hot today. I'm not in the mood to sit through one of these lame old man tales, but seeing as how he's old and might drop dead from this heat at any moment, I let him continue. He and I sat outside under what pitiful coolness the trees offered. Back in my day I saw a heat wave like this. Only once, though. They said it was the hottest day ever recorded. And you know what? Boy, he waited for me to look in his direction. I shrugged. I believed it. Gee, Gramps, thank you for that old info. Fact, there isn't a lot of time, boy. Time for WHA. I attempt to interject, but he is already moving on. Ever notice how Granny never wears short sleeves? Come to think of it, I hadn't. He must have observed my puzzled expression from where they grabbed her. I felt my brows lower in confusion. What are you talking about, Gramps? And that limp of hers, notice she has always hobbled about. He continues with a sort of glazed look in his eye. Perhaps the heat is already getting to him. Yeah, sure, I say almost unconsciously. There is an ominous vibe between us now. I then never seen him like this. Something in his mannerisms is different from the fall. Busted her ankle real good. A tiny price, though, wouldn't you say, Bo? I nodded as, till unsure what the old man spoke of. He rocked back and forth in his chair. The dull squeaking of the metal legs annoyed me greatly in the heat. Then again, when it's this blistering hot, any little irritation will seem severe. His breathing even got my own nerves. They're just things, boy, nobody knows. Some say they fly, some say they walk, some say they tunnel in the ground, some say OT of things, some say they do it all. What are you talking about, Grandpa? I asked. He didn't seem to register the question. She wanted to go, boy, I saw it in her eyes. Something, somehow. She had been convinced to go. I knew right then and there that what I saw, taking hold of her, and what she saw were two very different things. I put my hand on his arm. Gramps, what are you? It's hot, boy, he intoned quickly. No touching. Stay on your side. It reminds me of that day so long ago. Hot just like this. Probably even hotter. Well, maybe just as hot. You feel it, don't you? Boy, yeah, I feel it, I told him, reclining back in my chair as the awkward nature of this conversation intensified. The sky didn't harbor a single cloud. Dull blue stretches of space as far as the eye could see. No relief from the sun, Although the heat didn't seem to be emanating from the distant fireball, I guess it had to be. But somehow it felt like a closer source was creating this scorching, burning war. MTA. Gramps lifted his arm from the chair, directing a hand toward the woods. Some say they caused the heat. Something about them warmed the very air itself. But not me. No way, Bo. Why, I never thought they was the cause. I always thought they followed it. The things here never caused it. Something else did. They just came along with it. All right. Gramps' story was becoming, anything but boring. Downright unnerving, in fact. He had a peculiar way of talking now which led me to question whether he knew who was in front of him or not. Would you like some what? I offered. Here I noticed Gramps would sporadically look to the sky or to the tall trees, offering a bit of shade, although his face never changed as he did so. It remained just as stoic and straight as ever. I had to wonder how the man had so many wrinkles on his face in such strange places when he never made a single expression. The neighbors, too. I didn't much care about them now. Just your granny when they got whole. Gramps, what are you talking about? My voice sounding perhaps a bit harsher than I intended. You're never the same after, he said, almost in a whisper. No one asked, how could you be? Grandpa, I shook his arm. What the hell are you going on about? I said, don't touch they who, all those years ago, boy, when they came on a hot day just like this one. Clear sky, but you feel the warmth like it's bubbling up from the ground. Like every blade of grass and pebble on the road is a hot stove. That's fine. Grandpa, yes, I feel it too. Who is they? The FBI, a ghost, some monster. No, boy, I don't believe in the supernatural. These things wasn't the paranormal. They weren't some host tale. Gramps paused for a moment as he gathered a load of spit in his mouth before forcefully expelling it from his lips with an awful sound as it sailed over my head, the loud sizzling effect as the liquid landed. They were real. Who knows where they came from? Who knows how they came about? I just know they do come about. And when they do, boy, you don't want to be about, defend. Idly the heat, he must be off his rocker by now. I should probably take the hose to him. However, I'll play along a bit more. What did they look like? I questioned him, my palms beginning to sweat, and not just from the heat this time. What did they look like? Boy, something I never cared to see again. That's what it looked like. His unflinching resolution echoed in each of the words. My grandpa had never been a prankster. He'd never told a real joke in his life. I leaned in closer, my heart beating just a bit faster. I looked more closely at his face. Perhaps for the first time in my life I really examined the lines like nothing I had ever seen in person before. At least not first-hand extraordinary wrinkles, you might say. Not your everyday old man set of wrinkles, however gross that sounds. Gramps, I said, how did you get all those lines on your face? And for a second I thought he almost smiled. You don't think they make me look pretty? Have you seen these kinds of lines before? Boy, yes, I think so. Oh, where at? And I did have a vague recollection. They were in some book I saw a long time ago. Something about otherworldly or incredible hunters or something like that. There were several people with them in the book, the old-timer, and a bony finger along the deepest wrinkle stretching across his jawline. They appeared to be little lace carved right into the skin, with an almost unnatural color to them. Boy, he spoke. I made this expression one time, all those years ago, just as I moved to save why our granny from being. I made it one time, and they've been stuck ever since. I stared intently at his visage. Do you think the heat, kind of burned them on? Or what happened? Gramps just grunted, his favorite answer most of the time. You were doing what for, Granny? It's not something you want to know about, boy. Hot day, just like this one. They came or she went. Makes no matter. The end was the same. You could never see, that you could always feel. I think they wanted you to sense their presence, to know they was about. There came a slight tremor in the ground. You could feel your each shift ever so slightly, so minor you might just as easily have missed it, if not for my heightened senses and bated breath. But don't worry yourself too much, boy, not just yet. He's still some time left. Gramps, please, I whined. Tell me what. A large, fast-moving shadow swept over the ground. I jerked my head upward, but by the time my eyes reached the skies, there was nothing. I heard a branch snap from somewhere above us in the nearby tree line. Off on the horizon, the sun began its final descent for the day. Grandpa put his hand on my knee. His face looked calm as he stared you. He toward the nose. Why don't you and me go inside now? Boy, the next sound came a little closer. Story 5, The Closest Enemy. Some murderers see their work as an art form. If their piece is a success, they will continue on with their life outside of jail. However, with the limited capability of understanding humans possessed, combined with their narrow-mindedness, the true secret of a kill lair can go entirely missed. The following is a video log of young men recording his last moments. It spends its time quietly residing in a dark, silent evidence room, calling out to whoever may hear its cry. Upon deaf ears will its shrill screams always fall. The video starts off recording the youth adjusting his camera. His room is entirely dark, not a single speck of light to be found. The camera records in night vision as the man looks directly into the lens and begins speaking. Hello, my name is. The voice pauses for a moment, deciding how he should start of. No, I'm not beginning it like this. It sounds too much like I'm recording my last words. That isn't what I want this to be. Instead, I'll just get straight to the explanation. I'll describe to you the hell that has been nipping at me for God only knows how long now. It started the night of my 18th birthday. January's cold held reign over our outside activities. It was just a small party, if you could even call it that. A few presents from my family, cake, the norm, all irrelevant. It was that night, as I was lying in bed, my lights out with my TV providing the only light for the room, that my story begins. My curtains and blinds were closed, which gave the room a nice ominous feel at the time. I liked that sort of thing back then. The man takes a slow breath, looking away from the camera for the first time. His focus returns after a brief moment, and once more he begins reciting his story. Right back to what I was saying, my TV was in front of me, and the light gave out cast a shadow on the wall beside me. I was a bit bored, so I decided to entertain myself by interacting with the two-dimensional doppelganger of myself. My hand traced along the wall as if I was playing a game of tag with my shadow's hand, which seemed to be trying to flee from me, going out in front of me. That was the first sign, but I didn't notice it. I should have. He'd been more aware. A brief pause accompanied by a stressed exhale and quick inhale. His expression seemed to show that he was trying to think. After that, I'm sure there were more signs. I'm positive they were probably just too subtle for me to notice. By the time I did notice something wrong, it might as well have been written in big bold letters in front of me. It was later on in the day, and I was in the kitchen of our house by myself. It was mildly lit, just enough to see where you're going without needing the aid of a light. I got some snack out of a cabinet, but Kay knocked over a box onto the ground in the process. No big deal. I bent over to pick it up and noticed the presence of my shadow. It immediately struck me as awkward. There was no light in here to cast a shadow. I put the box and my snack on a nearby counter, without letting my eyes leave my shadow. If they were deceiving me, I wanted to know right away. My interest in the paranormal may have made me a bit paranoid, but I knew that the tenseness I was feeling now wasn't unwarranted. I took a step towards the room's exit, and of course my shadow mimicked me. I raised my left arm, as if tempting him to continue mirroring what I was doing. He raised his left arm, then he raised his right arm. Mine was still at my side. My skin crawled like a trillion tiny little bugs were trying to make their way out from under it. Then in one swift movement his hands wrapped around his neck, and I was the one who felt its effects. My throat was pained and my breathing stopped. I struggled frantically, but against what my attacker was my own shadow. I don't remember what happened after that. Only what I was told by my family when I woke up. My blood was on the corner of one of the cabinet doors I had left open. Apparently I knocked myself good and passed out on the floor. Back then I was happy to believe that's what really happened. After all, this kind of stuff only happens in stories. Once more he collects himself from the rough memories with a deep breath of air. After that I was always suspicious of the me that didn't talk, that didn't have any facial expressions, that would never confess to what he did to me. But what I had thought happened had a perfectly logical explanation. I couldn't doubt it. Instead, I carried on, always holding that distrust in the back of my mind, but he didn't assault me again, though several times I noticed things that just couldn't have really happened. I'd brush my teeth with my right hand, he'd use his left. I'd scratch my back, he'd scratch his head. I'm sure he was just taunting me, probably the same reason he let me live the first time he attacked me. For fun. No doubt there is a creak off too. The man's left, which catches his attention. He stares at the origin of the sound intently for a moment before returning to his monologue. The next attack, I'm betting this one was planned to finish me off. Once again I was in the kitchen, home alone for the time. I had an apple on a plate, and I grabbed a steak knife from its group. Not entirely necessary for cutting an apple, but it was in easy reach. Only halfway through grabbing the knife did I realize that when I had it, so did my shadow, my enemy. Stunned by my lack of thinking, I dropped the knife as I feared my shadow did not repeat this action. If he had a face, I'm sure it would have been filled by a crooked and malevolent smile. I whispered no, as best as I could. My voice was barely more than a whisper. but I doubt it made any bit of a difference. My silhouette raised the knife and then brought it down in one swift and carrying motion. The result was a jet of blood from my arm and a surge of pain that reverberated several times throughout my body. But on instinct, the first turned around and ran. I didn't know where, and I didn't know why. I couldn't outrun him. Another stab. This one brought me tea. Oh, my knees, the nearest room was the bathroom. I dragged myself across the carpet, slowly into the room, and shut the door behind me. There was no window to the outside, which made the room completely dark. I waited for him to return. I was expecting to be ended by something that was essentially me. Hours went by and nothing happened. That's when I learned how to defeat him. He can't exist in total darkness. He becomes nothing. The young man looked around his surroundings, devoid of any light, and then back to the camera. And that's why I'm here now. I couldn't do this at age. If I tried to explain, I would have been sent out to an asylum. I had to run away. I suppose he let me get this far as a sort of show sportsmanship. Twisted. Doesn't matter, really, so long as I am in this chamber of darkness, I'm safe. That's all that matters for now, although I can't help but wonder how long I'll be trapped in here. What do I do when I run out of food? What do I do? The sound of cars pulling up and parking outside stopped the young man mid-sentence. Taylor, are you in there? Please, Taylor, say something, a voice yelled just outside the door. And the young man's previous moderately calm demeanor has changed to one of panic. Go away, just go. I don't want you here. Go away, damn it. He screamed back. His voice was so angered that the woman on the other side was silent for a minute. Taylor, we're coming in. Honey, it's for your own good. There was a smash against the door. Then another, followed by a soft-spoken no from the young man. The third crash brought the door down with a tremendous thud. Light from outside flooded the room, and almost immediately the man was knocked to the ground by some invisible force. In the struggle, the camera is tipped backwards and only records the sounds of Taylor struggling for breath as his mother and the accompanying police officer try to help him in some manner. Without avail. Story 6, The Great A and Powerful Oz. Not all ghost stories are scary, but they can still send chills down your spine. My grandfather was a Lutheran minister. Growing up, he had for brothers his wife. My grandmother was an only child and the divorcee, a terrible blemish. In the 1950s, when they wed, her first husband had been abusive. But even with that justification, a divorced woman marrying a minister in that day and age was an anomaly. Other than that, I know remarkably little about my grandparents. This story is about my grandfather. Grandpa Boo, we called him, though he was never S.C. Harry to us. He had a big hearty laugh and would sometimes take the long way home down a big hill so our tummies would toss. He'd let us decorate his office with streamers. When we went to visit him, we usually impersonated the mysterious figure of Oz that my sister and I had dreamed up one day. As children, the joke stuck. Every time we visited, we'd dress up a mannequin in a costume and positio, and it at the top of the stairs, saying that us had come to visit too. Over the years, we started sending tapes back and forth of our deeply modified recorded voices, always impersonating Oz. He usually had a riddle or joke for us. Sometimes he told us to be good or enjoy an upcoming trip. In turn, we'd create tapes and send them to him. He thought we were immensely talented and would tell anyone who'd listen that my sister and I were going to be famous broadcasters someday. Story 7. Tropical Storm Faye. The events in this story occurred on a warm and humid night in late August of 2008, the night after Tropical Storm Faye ripped through our town in Gadsden County, Florida. Looking back on this, I will say that the terror of that storm was nothing compared to what followed the night after the storm passed through our area the days prior to this storm making landfall here. Was a scary time. We had heard that it was coming in this direction, and we prepared for it. But in the back of our minds we thought and hoped that it would head elsewhere. After all, this area had not been hit directly by any hurricane or tropical storm since Hurricane Kate in 1985. Considering is Florida, this area had been lucky for the past 23 hurricane seasons, and we had hoped to stay that way. However, there was something quite unusual about the path of this storm. It seemed to have made a deliberate path that covered the entire state of Florida. The night after the storm was a very peculiar and unnervingly silent night. After the storm, the sheriff of our county ordered a mandatory curfew, asking that everyone please ensure that they remain indoors after dark until things were restored back to normal. Because of this, there were no cars on the highway, which made it even more silent. We live very close to a river that runs through this part of the county. Although the river is not close enough to see from the house and a considerable walk through the woods, the storm had caused it to swell into a raging and violent river that was now literally in the woods behind our house. Besides the distant sound of the raging water and the occasional eerie whisper of the wind blowing through the pines, there was nothing. It felt as if I was the last person on earth. But little did I know I was not alone. Since the storm had passed, my parents decided to go stay with my elderly grandmother, who lived alone and needed someone to be with her until the power was restored and things were back to normal. I was 19 years old at the time, so this was okay with them. Although the thought of being alone in the dark seemed a bit unnerving. There had been warnings on the radio of looting in the area, so as a precaution, he mounted 2 outdoor trail cameras outside. We live in a highly secluded and wooded area, so I hoped that the chances of anyone coming here was low. One of the cameras was mounted above the back door, and it was motion activated there for anyone or anything, in this case coming up to the back door, would trigger it to flash and take a picture. The other one was pointed towards the screen door of the front porch. I was sitting in the living room, had a few candles burning in the room, and the living room windows open. The storm had left behind a warm and sticky humidity in the air, and since the lack of power meant no air conditioning, the only relief was to have the windows open. I only wanted windows open in the room that I was in currently because the warnings on the radio had me pretty nervous. As I was sitting there, trying to read with what little light the candles provided, I began to hear the faint sound of leaves crackling, as if something was coming. At that moment it sounded far away, but just close enough for me to hear it. I immediately blew out the candles, as I instantly feared that it was the looters they warned us about on the radio. If that was the case, I did not want them to see me through the windows. I crouched down against the wall, sitting in complete darkness looking towards the window, hoping that maybe I could see if someone passed by. I sat there, continued listening for the sound, but it seemed to have stopped for a few minutes. In some attempt to comfort my worried mind, I began thinking perhaps it's wildlife trying to get away from the swollen river, just to be safe and certain that it was not a person. I continued sitting there. For a while, all I could hear was the faint sound of the river rushing through the trees in the woods behind the house, and the whispering pine trees swaying in the wind, the only two sounds that remained in my world at this dark and scary time. For what felt like an hour, but was really only a matter of minutes, I started to hear the sound again, but this time it was closer. In addition to this, the sound of crackling leaves was not only closer, but I began hearing this awful sound that sounded almost like had of a squealing pig or wild boar. The sound stopped for a moment. I thought perhaps it really is a wild boar, which is not uncommon in this area. I sat there, quite freaked out at this moment. And it was then that I realized I had not locked the back door. I decided to get up and make my way back there to lock the door before whatever it was had a chance to get in. When I walked towards the back, I saw a flash through the window which indicated that something was already at the back door. It was the flash from the outdoor camera mounted above the back door. Frozen in fear, I stood still for a moment in dead silence when I heard the sound of heavy boots in the utility room where the back door was. At this moment I felt sickly and terrified, as I knew I was no longer alone, and that now someone was in here with me. Was it looters? Was it someone here to cause me harm? All kinds of thoughts racing to my mind, including where I was going to run to. I could barely make out the sight of a tall figure standing at the doorway. I had a flashlight in my hand. I turned it on and shined it towards the door to the utility room. It was then I saw it, still today the most terrifying sight I've ever seen, burned into my mind forever. There stood a tall figure, with the darkest pits in its eyes, a head full of small and goat-like horns and hooves as its feet, but yet when it walked it sounded as if a heavy man with boots was walking. Every time it exhaled, it sounded as if it were grunting. It immediately charged at me, making a wheezy squealing sound. I ran into the guest bedroom, which was right beside where I was standing. I ran in, slammed the door shut, propping against it to hold it closed. I was expecting a struggle, or at least for it to make an attempt to get in. Instead, after slamming the door, all I heard was silence. Where did it go, or more seriously, where did it come from? It appeared to come afar. On the greatest depths of hell was this Satan himself. For what felt like an eternity, I sat quietly against the door, waiting, hoping it was gone. I didn't sleep at all for the remainder of that night. After daylight came, I decided that I had to at least check the house. I slowly opened the door, an inch at a time, and saw nothing there. I took one slow step at a time throughout the whole and noticed nothing other than the back door wide open, swaying in the wind. My thoughts were that nobody would believe this harrowing story, but I knew if I could retrieve the photo from the back door or camera, then just maybe it would show everyone this hideous creature. Several days later, when power was restored, I connected the camera to my computer to pull up the photos. To my dismay, there was indeed one photo, but what it displayed was not what I saw in front of my very eyes. It showed a blurry orb-like object passing in front of the camera. Still today I wonder, what was it? Where did it come from, and where did it go? I never before saw anything like that here, and never again has it showed its ugly face. However, I am forever haunted by it. I still wake up a lot of mornings at exactly 3:33 a.m. Coincidence. Every time I awake to the sight of 3:33 a.m. on my alarm clock, I have to wonder, is it here? Is it somewhere close by, watching and waiting? Did this entity come here to send a message, or did it come to send a warning? Was it related in any way to this storm that seemed to deliberately trace its way to me? Perhaps these questions will never be answered, or perhaps the next time you awake at 3:33 a.m., it could be somewhere in the room with you, hiding in the darkness around you, watching and waiting to show itself. I will write what kind of events will come along with the next big storm. But I will never forget what I saw the night after Tropical Storm Faye.